Well, as you can
Shut her hand ain't on the table.
as you can tell, we're trying to be sane here and finish up this weekend of celebrating Mother and Daddy's 62nd wedding anniversary. So we just thought we'd gather around our little table and maybe ask them some questions we might not have asked them before. So I'm going to ask mine first. And as we were trying to think of the questions we were asking, my two sisters got really deep. And I'd already written my question, but I want to know the answer to this. So either one of you can tell me this. Where and why were we getting on that big train that scared me? The locomotive scared me, I think.
Mother knows.
It's a really deep question. Would you like to answer it?
I will. You want me to?
Speak up.
Okay, we were attending a Rhame reunion in Walking, Texas. We didn't have a car, so we couldn't stay the whole day for the reunion.
When was it?
1948, wasn't it?
About that, yeah.
And so Felix, we had to leave before lunch, and Felix took us down to the depot, and we rode the train back home, and that's why.
To where? To Houston?
Houston.
We caught the train in Walking.
Walking and rode to Houston. And you didn't want on the train because you had heard train whistles and you were so scared. And after we got on the train and started it, you said, I can hardly hear it. So that
Well, I just remember it was pretty traumatic.
You know, there are a lot of things that we've learned from each other just from when we talk, those kind of things. But I was just sitting here looking at all of us sitting close like this and enjoying a cup of coffee, and I noticed all y'all's cups match and mine doesn't. And mine adopted.
Well, that's why we really decided to gather
No,
around.
am I
Here,
adopted?
have a cookie. Have a cookie.
I just wondered if I was adopted. No, I really do have a question. I really do. You told us, you know,
Let me
about
change
your-
this cup first.
That's okay, I'll take the hill. You told us about what you told Uncle Earl when you first saw her and all. But I don't think I've ever heard how you asked her to marry you. I want to know how you asked her to marry you.
That's an interesting point because actually the formal proposal came from my dad to her.
Are you serious?
He asked me to marry him first.
He had watched me moon around lonesomely and on a farm up in Shelby County, and he knew what my problem was. Her family visited us on the weekend, and just before they were to leave and go back to Sabine County, we were standing and talking together, and my dad walked up, and I don't remember precisely what he said, but I think he said, why don't you put this guy out of his misery and tell him you'll marry him?
Oh,
Precious.
what did you say?
His answer was, I already have asked her.
Oh. And you'd already asked her?
Well,
Or you talked about it?
we talked about it. It was understood. Yeah, we had an understanding.
I think that's so precious.
And when he said that, did you say that
My
back?
papa had to hug me and love me.
And it felt fine then
To leave her?
because then it was finalized. Yeah.
Mm.
We're gonna get married.
Go. What month did you ask her to marry you?
What month?
Uh-huh.
Oh, well,
It was
Just short.
I wouldn't say that I know, absolutely. I suspect that it was
I had to go.
like November, December of the previous year,
Oh.
because we were moving away. And neither had telephones, I had no transportation. And so, to me, it makes sense that we would have more or less settled this thing before I moved a couple of counties away.
But you didn't marry till the next June.
I just think that.
She was too young at that time.
She was too young to fall in love, and you were too young to know.
We've been engaged for
Oh,
2
my
years when we married.
How old was too young?
14.
Oh, my
We
God.
were engaged when I was 14. 2 years.
She says, I don't recall that there was any formalization of that, but her remember may be better than mine.
Wow.
So you were 19.
When she was 14, I was 19.
Oh, me.
Okay. So let's follow up with that. Tell me about the wedding and the events that inspired afterwards, like this supper.
Wait.
No. The wedding
Whoa,
supper.
So what day did y'all get married on? No, day, not the date.
Saturday.
Okay.
Same as yesterday.
Okay.
In fact,
At
I
3
asked
o'clock in the afternoon.
her, did she think she could tell me how many times this anniversary has worked back to Saturday? I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't
But
know
we're
how.
married on the leap year, so you can go by that. So this just,
So it's really not your 62nd?
Oh my gosh.
We gotta do this again.
Okay, so now tell me about the wedding.
y'all moved away in what?
About December. December of 1939.
Where'd y'all marry?
On the front porch of that house.
See the house
Right there.
pictured there in
Yes.
a pencil drawing?
Yes, sir.
You see that one, two, fourth post from the left
The one with the
on the
fingernail down?
front porch.
The one you gnawed in half?
That's the one I clung to while that preacher went on and on.
Well, at that time, that house was not closed up. Daddy closed up the, what they call the dog run. And the house, is it still open there?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay, well, the wedding table, supper table was in that dog run.
Ooh.
Was the lengthwise of that.
So it was a long ceremony?
It
Actually,
was 3 in the afternoon.
it was a hall. We had no dogs. It was a hallway.
That's what they called it, was the dog run.
Yeah.
Okay.
That ring that's in that picture, that wedding band, did you have that one at that time?
I did not. I had no ring.
Oh,
I didn't.
wondered about
I
that.
had no means to buy a ring.
Yeah.
I had no means to go to a place to buy a ring. And so it was
Congratulations.
about a year and a half, 2 years later that I bought the ring.
Oh, I didn't know that.
For, as I recall, $11.80
What a new band.
or thereabout.
That was the engagement ring. He gave it to me a little prior to the wedding ring. And that was just before I graduated.
So where'd it come from?
Zales Jewelry.
Wow.
Where?
I had learned to
In Houston.
ride the Houston Transit bus. I could go downtown and get back to Canal Street without getting lost. Proud of me. I went,
Downtown Houston.
yeah.
See, he went to work at Shell in February, and I didn't get out of school till May.
So you had this wedding feast there in the hall,
Uh-huh.
the
That
dog
was
boys hall.
That was Saturday evening, and his mother and daddy Essie and Uncle Jean lived north of Hemphill. So Mom and Papa Rhame went up there and spent the night with them. And then Sunday evening we had to go back because he had to go back to work at the farm. And he took Daddy's car.
Okay.
And he went, we borrowed Daddy's car. Daddy didn't have a car, and we went by Gene and Essie's. And I have to tell you something funny. Because when he drove in and parked, it was a picket fence in front of their house, and he parked kind of parallel the nose to the fence. And I got out with my back to they were all sitting on the front porch. And I got out with my back to the front porch. And suddenly arms come over that fence and around me, and my father-in-law says, "Did you sleep well last night?"
That
I think that's
Well,
so
just
weird.
going under that fence.
But wait a minute, I want to hear about the wedding supper. You said the wedding table was set up in the hallway.
Mhm.
Who prepared it? What
His
did you have?
mother and my mother.
I bet they had
Good
sweet
country
potatoes.
food.
I guess it's helped, huh?
We used to live in Hemphill, so.
What y'all
Well, I know, but they were there.
Yeah, well, so
I'm
was
sure
Julie early.
No. We're not.
What y'all have?
Well, there's one thing that I asked his mother to prepare that she made so good, and that was, she made her own spaghetti noodles with tomatoes, and nobody can fix it like that.
Is that what you called it, spaghetti?
No, it was tomato dumplings,
Oh.
and of course we had cake, we had pie, and we had vegetables, and just a regular country meal. And they all left and went up back to Essie and Jean's, and we spent the night at Mom and Daddy's. Our
Just
wedding
the
night.
two of you.
And the Mama and Daddy and Aunt Viola and Grandma and Grandpa.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I had the offer from friends of ours, my brother Earl's sister-in-law, I believe, to use their house, or was Merlin Lewis who lived in that house at the time. Anyhow, it was offered to us that night. And somebody prevailed on us to stay at her parents' house.
And we did. And we slept in the middle bedroom, and Aunt Viola slept in the joining room. And it had open windows between our bedroom and her bedroom.
Oh, my God. And then you went back to school Monday morning? No, school was
No,
out.
this is
School.
something.
I went back to school in September.
Okay, so when you went back to school in September, were you the only one out of your class that had gotten married over the summer?
I believe so.
Uh,
Well, I wasn't there, but I think so.
Mildred and I guess she was already married.
And unmarried. But
So,
Mildred Behrman.
Mother was at school and you were in Houston working?
right.
His parents moved back to Sabine County, and they lived in the house there in Yellow Pine. And my dad rode the school bus that I rode to school. And sometime I would spend the night with his mother and daddy and Uncle Ray.
Did you come home every weekend, Daddy?
No.
But my
Did you
daddy
want to
would
come
take
home
me
every
down
weekend?
there. My daddy,
Midweek.
Come home every day.
And midweek, is it?
my mom
No, I
and daddy
didn't
would
come.
go see Uncle Clem and Aunt Nina, and I'd get to go spend the weekend with him.
Where were you living?
Uncle Sid.
You were living with Uncle Sid?
Yeah.
On Canal?
On off Canal Street, if you remember where the
Linwood.
Houston Light and Power Plant units and Continental Can Company, they were across Greenwood Street from each other in the same block on Canal that we lived on Linwood.
He lived on Linwood. We lived on
Sid,
Greenwood.
where Sid lived, Linwood.
Oh, we lived on.
Okay, so when you joined, after you graduated, I guess, then
I caught
you
the train. I got my diploma that night, and I caught the train the bus the next morning. And Aunt Tell and Uncle Hoss lived in Houston, and they met me at the bus station.
So-
Picked me up, and we went to their apartment.
okay, so when did y'all find your first apartment?
He had already gotten it
Yeah,
before I got there on Linwood Street.
Sherman. Mr. Phillips.
No, he first had the apartment at the Campbells, upstairs, where they met and sang at their
No. No Campbell's, Butler.
Butlers, yeah. That's where you had the first apartment. And then we found the Sherman Street.
Was it about as big as this dining room?
Almost that big. And this was 2 rooms.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
And he worked nights, and there was an outside stairway. We could come inside or
Private entrance on this.
up outside. And I was 17. I was scared to stay there at night by myself. So when he went to work, I would push the dresser and everything in front of that swinging door that went into our kitchen, not realizing they could open it from the other way. I felt very safe.
Which house were you living at when the Fuller Brush man, you bought all the Fuller Brush?
Oh, we had moved down on
Greenwood.
Greenwood.
Tell us about that.
We had reached some sense of permanency by this time. We were living in apartments at least 8 or 10 months by this time.
And it had much bigger house.
Now,
So,
this was a duplex.
okay, so Daddy was at work,
Mhm.
and what happened?
The man knocked on the door, and he was just full of brush man, salesman.
Boy,
And he came in. And,
By this time, you let people in, strangers, into your apartment.
well, yeah, his name wasn't easily. wasn't
pardon me?
it? His name wasn't easily.
As far as I know, it wasn't.
Well, for some reason or other, I let him in anyhow.
Because you thought his name was easy.
No, there was
Was it
one that came to our
cousin?
house with the name Easley though. But I let him in, and of course he showed me all these brushes, and I was a little country girl, and I never seen all these brushes, and I needed a brush for everything. 'Cause I just started housekeeping. So when he came home from work, how many did I have?
7 or 8.
Anyhow, I had to call that guy to come back and get my brushes.
Surprised me that he answered and was simple enough to come back and get it.
Which one could you keep any of them?
Yeah, we did. We did. And the last one disappeared after we bought the house and moved over in Pecan Park. After, see, this is pre-war, and this after war. We bought the house in Pecan Park. We still had one broom left. It was a push broom, you know, with the black brushes on it.
Tell him what happened to it.
I was using it to sweep the sidewalk after mowing, and it was lying on the sidewalk. Somebody's bird dog, who was at least as tall as this table is high, come sauntering down the sidewalk, never slowed down, reached down, picked up that broom and disappeared.
Last we saw, he was going down Lilac Street with that broom in his mouth.
He had a what is it, a good,
I think maybe he was the repo man.
you never paid for that.
Of the brush sale.
Did you try to catch him, or were you so dumbfounded?
I was that, yeah.
It was a sight to behold. He had it crossways in his mouth going right down the street. The handle I'm talking about, he kind of went one side because the brush was heavier than the handle.
Vision of that.
Yeah.
But that, I can't hold that too much because I fell for equally as and a more expensive, come on with the encyclopedia set.
Oh, you did?
Oh, I did.
Is that where
Is
we
that the
got
ones
that
we've
set of
got?
encyclopedias?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
right.
them. They were $246.
In what year?
1946.
So why did you want those?
Well, I felt the need for it.
He did want them,
And
didn't
in
he?
learning, and that's a place to get it.
Yes.
Book
Yeah.
learning.
Yes.
Actually, we had children by this time and it would be
It was
education.
I was 3 years old and I needed an
Yeah,
encyclopedia.
yeah.
You couldn't reach the faucets if you didn't have an encyclopedia. This thing, no, could you?
Well, I still use those encyclopedias.
Great.
I do.
They were.
We still use one dictionary. If I can't find the word in a crossword puzzle, I can go to that dictionary that doesn't have a back on it, but
Do-
it's still in there and I can find the word that I can't find in any
You
other.
mean you can open those? I just use them to put stuff on.
They are decor.
They are decor. But I'm sure glad you got those, Daddy.
great color.
Well, he
Great
said,
job.
I had no intention, and when that guy left, I had signed that dotted line for $246.
Well, it might interest you to know that several years later, one of your children is married to a man that did the same thing.
Encyclopedia.
I thought, I was not surprised to find that this was something that happened to a lot of youngsters.
Yeah.
Power of self.
I think it's a known fact that after our ceremony had ended, he asked if I could find him an aspirin. And he took an aspirin.
There were miracle drugs even back then.
Because he had a terrific
Did
headache.
you, were you just nervous? Is that why you had a headache, you think?
I don't know. I never know why I have a headache. I just know my head hurts.
I didn't give it to him then.
I
because
can't
didn't
tell
have time.
anybody that I've had a headache because of anxiety or what. All I can say is my head hurts.
Yeah. And there's some people that never have a headache. I can't believe that.
Unfortunately.
Yes, they are.
I'm gonna get a little deep here right now, but this morning when Mother and Daddy and I were leaving, I told him I was watching them come out to the car, and I told him, I said, I just have to tell you, I don't think there is a more beautiful bride and groom anywhere this day than you two are. And Daddy said something about, how pretty Mother was, and she said the same to you, and he started naysaying, no, I know better than that, as only he can work her like that. And I tried to tell him, both of them, that so she started fishing for a tissue. I said, no, I'm going to get through this without a tear, because I just want to tell you this, that the type of beauty that comes from both of them is so much more enhanced than any kind of physical or cosmetic beauty. And because it comes from such a beautiful souls and such deep love. And so thinking about what we talked about this morning, and I know what your answer is going to be, but I want to hear you both say it. Is there anything that you dreamed about on that wedding day that hasn't come true for you in these 62 years?
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe I had some dreams of misgiving on the wedding or thereabout. But I say this with every ounce of earnestness that I can muster, that more has happened that was good and beyond description than otherwise. That's true.
That is true. I look at us and I am just amazed at our blessings and how they just keep getting there, greater
Yeah.
and further spread. And I know where our source of love comes from.
And I thank you for that. We
I
thank you
know
for that.
what a blessing it is to have been raised in this kind of home.
It's almost unbelievable to me that that there can be families that anything less than that exists.
I know. I was always shocked. I thought everyone had the kind of home we did, the kind of mother and daddy we had. And, not so.
Which makes it just that much more unique and such a sweet blessing.
And I wish I knew sign language since I can't talk. I wish I could do it. We stopped
Another
at,
thing we talked about this morning was while we was on the way to church, talking about beautiful children, beautiful grandchildren, beautiful great-grandchildren, how no other kind ever appeared in our circle. And we believe that had one like that occurred, you know, it would have been the object of more love than the rest of them.
Absolutely. But none of them would have ever felt loved any differently.
yeah, that's true.
I would like to believe so,
That's
yes.
That's right.
Because, you know, really, now this is not for anything but the truth. I had training in loving one who couldn't love back. Or possibly he did, but we didn't know it. That leaves an impression.
Well,
Mama wants to talk.
I just have to say, I will never be able to thank you enough for what you've taught me, what you've shown me, and how you've loved me. I wish I could. I wish I could thank you. You have to know how hard I've tried.
Well, I know that you all don't know, but a lot of times we have our own private talks of admiration of our 3 children. And it's not gonna get through that.
Sure, a sign language.
The inanimate dividends of a life that we enjoy. Gotcha.
And I'll tell Sandy and Shara that last thing Daddy said was, he said, and this is really what I mean when I tell you. And all his benefits. Bless his holy name.
Oh, that's right.
That's what he meant when he said that.
If one started trying to define what he means by saying, and forget not all these benefits, he might talk until the end of his time and leave things unsaid.
Well, while we're so deep here, I want to ask the question, if there were a day, and your answers might be different, in your life that you could live over, which day would that be? And why?
Only day I can think of is the day he left for the war, and I didn't want it to ever be. That's all.
I can't answer it. I don't know.
That was a bad day.
So there's not a good day that really stands out, one single day that you would say, that's so good, I just wish I could live this day over?
Well,
till you
Uh,
came back.
she reminded me, which would be the day I got home
That's
from service.
Tell us about that.
Oh, 1946.
I'd like to describe that.
Yeah, we'd like to hear you.
Okay, he called and I lied to it on that old phone thing. When he called, he says, "How are the babies?" "Oh, they're fine." "Well, can you meet me at Sid's?" And I said, "No." "Why can't you?" "Because they're both real sick." So he says, "Okay, I'll just catch the bus and come home." Well, Uncle Hollis,
Where was he calling from?
he was calling from San Diego,
No,
San
calling
Francisco.
from San
San
Francisco.
Francisco. And both of you, of all things, had kidney. What the doctor said was pylitis of the kidney. But both of you had it. Fever was real high. Anyway,
So you were back in Yellow Pine, and he
Uh-huh.
was wanting you to meet him at Uncle Sid's
Uncle
in
Sid's in
Houston.
Houston. And bring the kid, which I could. But then he says, "Well, I'll just catch a bus." And Sid took him to the bus station and picked me up at Hempville that night at 8. So I got her ready, and then Mama had helped you. But that afternoon it was cold and raining, and I had gotten out and got some wood to put around the wash spot so I could boil my diapers and get them real clean and have them packed when he came home. and Uncle Hollis was sheriff. I had on a pair of my dad's old overalls and an old red sweatshirt. And Uncle Hollis met the bus, saw him get off the bus in Hempville because he was sheriff up there. And he brought him home, and that's how he found him.
And that day was
That day was,
14th.
Valentine's Day
Valentine's
of
Day.
1946?
And he brought me
Right.
Valentine and a pair of pajamas from Japan.
14th, May 14th, June 14th, July 14th,
Just 8
August
months.
14th, September 14th,
I've gone over that several
October
times.
14th.
You must have been premature.
I was 2 weeks, pretty sure premature.
And how much did you weigh?
9 pounds.
So it's been real nice seeing you. Thanks for the coffee.
I always enjoy this family.
After she got grown, every time she signed the Father's Day card, from my father, I hope, or I think.
I found one year that said you've been like a father to me.
Well, anyway, Sandy had not forgotten her dad. And of course, Cheryl didn't know him before very, very well. She was a very small baby. And so Sandy got up in his lap. So she would just, anytime anybody asked her, "Where's your daddy?" He just tossed the water. And so when she got in his lap that night, she rubbed his pants. She said, "My daddy's pants ain't wet."
That was smart.
You really were.
I
needed that. You needed that
Encyclopedia.
He would Cheryl would go to him, but immediately she'd turn around and come back to either me or Mama. She didn't know him.
I guess I should have told you more about him.
Yes, you should have.
You weren't very selective, I remember. Coming home on leave once, we were riding the train. And the porter on the train had a black uniform on. And I think you associated it with me because I heard that on your 3 trip home after I had gone over, shipped out, you would see one coming.
We picked up a load in Arizona of servicemen.
And you said,
That's the daddy.
"That's the daddy."
This black guy comes through the berthing. "That's the daddy."
Well, that the dad.
Yeah.
This has been good. We didn't go, we can't go back to when we carried his parents back to Shelby County and I went to live up there. And we had this little house, lived with his mother and daddy in the road.
It was a rather large 4-room house
That was that.
4 rooms and a bath?
and a pad.
It had a pad. But there was a black guy that had the most beautiful voice, and his house was, he also worked for the same man. He was an old fella. How old was he?
Jack wasn't that old. He was, I would say, 45 to 50.
Oh, gosh, I
Well,
thought
you
he
were
was
young.
old. Anyway, late in the afternoon, evening, when he'd come from work, he would be singing. He had a lovely voice, and I just couldn't wait for him to come home so I could hear that. It was so pretty. But we lived, that was our neighbor, that was our closest neighbor. And talking about the wedding rings, I wore his class ring because I didn't have a wedding ring.
Oh.
And it was too big for me, and it slipped off my finger in a well there. It's buried in that well up there.
Hmm.
And I had battled quite a bit for that ring. In high school, again, go back to the fact that we had no money. And I peddled homemade syrup to get enough money to buy that ring. And she had the audacity to fling it in the well.
He peddled syrup to buy my class ring. And Diane let it go when they were robbed. It was in her jewelry box.
It's because she's adopted. Because I'm adopted.
I was being well paid, 35 cents an hour when I bought you a class ring.
When y'all married, during your ceremony, knowing that you didn't have a wedding ring, there wasn't any part about with this ring?
No.
So you didn't like have a borrowed ring
No,
or
no.
anything?
There were preachers then who could handle this situation and make it just as binding, yes.
Must be 62 years old.
Coincidentally, the preacher who did our ceremonies, name was Love.
So love married you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's kept them together.
I want you to tell me the story about when I was born.
Okay. Well, your daddy was in the Navy, of course, and the naval base was across the Silver Strand off of Coronado Island. And Fort Hill, 32nd was pretty far out downtown, but we didn't have a car, so we rode the bus wherever I had to go. But he came home every night. Everything was fine. He'd go, next night he'd come back. So this went on for several days. And finally I said, you know, I bet if you stayed at the base one night, this would happen. So persuaded him, and he did. He stayed that night, and sure enough, it happened. And it was 11 o'clock, but my neighbor had said, when you go in the hospital, I want to keep Sandy. She had a boy 9 years old, and that's the only child she had, and she loved her dearly. And I said, oh, let's answer the prayer because you're the only one I would have liked to have left her with. So I got up, got myself, our telephone was downstairs in the hall. We lived upstairs in this big old house.
Payphone.
Yeah, but I got my money. I went down, first of all, I called Johnny to come over and get Sandy, that I was fixing to go to the hospital. And then I called a taxi. I had my backpack all this time. And they sent a little young man, of course, most of the older men were in the service. And so this young man came out in the taxi, and when I got in the taxi, I said, I hope you're allowed to go across the Silver Strand. He said, I don't know. I'll have to go back downtown and get permission. So we go back downtown to get permission, and he did. And we had to ride the ferry across the silver
Oh, I
string.
bet you like that.
This was 11 o'clock at night
In water.
in water. And so when the little boy would not stay in the car with me, he got out and stood outside the car on the ferry. And so we got over there, but I called him first of all to tell him to meet me at the hospital and I needed him coming home. So he just meet me at the Naval Hospital. I was coming to have a baby. So finally we got over there, and when I got off, there was a Jeep with sirens, and they took me to the hospital with the siren blowing and blinking, and they rushed out a stretcher, and I got out and took my suitcase, and they said, "This lady doesn't need a stretcher." So that's about the last thing I remember. They took me on in. But then you won't tell your problem for that night.
You go ahead.
Okay. He had never been, he'd been to the doctor's office, but he'd never been to the hospital. So he gets, this time of the night, a sailor gets dressed to come to the hospital and don't know where he's going. So the first place he goes is in a waves barracks. And scared the girl to death at the desk. Sailors in the house. So they got him out of there. He got to the hospital finally. And she wasn't born until 9 o'clock the next morning. It was an experience.
They told me, you go down, you go to this street, and the first large barracks or large building you see with a lot of lights on, activity in there, that's the hospital, you know. And so I went down that way, and I went into the first large building I saw with a lot of lights on and activity, which was turned out to be active waves. And they, unceremoniously, tossed me out of there. It wasn't that they were so deadly afraid of sailors. It was just at the time of the day. By the time they got the information to me that I needed to go to the hospital, it was, by the time they found me and all that, well, I was getting over there about 2 o'clock. And so I did find the fire.
That was an experience for me.
Went to
I'd go to the
find out
doctor
what the situation
across the
was.
street.
Did your water break or something?
And
No, I just started having labor pain.
Oh, yeah.
I did all that in
said,
labor.
well, I can't do nothing here. I'm going down the lobby. I'll see you in the morning. They came and woke me up about what?
She was born at 9:06.
Well, I had gotten fairly a night's sleep.
I had not had a very good night.
Was your little taxi driver, was he nervous? Was he?
Well, I think he just wanted me out of his car.
What'd your taxi ride cost you?
Probably up to about 2.5.
I really don't remember.
Did you pay the fellow?
He wasn't around, she didn't pay it.
That wasn't my job, so I did my job.
I'm pretty sure she paid.
Well, there's another question I want to know. I want to know, what you thought, each of you, if it applies, what went through your mind the first time you saw an automobile, and just tell me that reaction, and the first time you saw an airplane?
The first car I saw, I think I was somewhere between 3 and 4 years old. It's right in the edge of my memory. But it's very clear. You know, strange that I said that, and then I say it's very clear. But this was about 1922, I'll say. Our mail had been delivered by Mr. Haley, who was a horse and buggy mail carrier. And my mom had ordered, as I recall, it was a broom, just a floor broom to sweep the floors with. And I knew the day that she expected it, she let me go down to the mailbox so that I could bring the broom to the house. And I started down there, well, with a motor car. You can see that the carrier arrived a little ahead of what he would have in the buggy. Anyhow, I saw this strange contraption coming down the road with dust flying up behind it, and I stopped. I didn't go on down to the mailbox. I stopped, and of all things, it turned in our road. We didn't have a driveway. We had a road that came up to our house, and I beat a hasty retreat. Needless to say, I ran frantically back to the house, trying to get away from this creature.
This creature.
And our house had a similar hallway as that one. We might have had a dog, but it's no part of the story. I rushed through that hallway anyway, out in the backyard, so that the house would be between me and this demoniac something out there.
Someone about Riley.
And there was one of Mom's hens with a whole bunch of baby chicks, and by golly, she assaulted me. A bad day.
You don't want to live that one over again?
I don't know.
And what about the airplane? Do you remember that?
I don't precisely remember it. I know generally when it was about the year 1924 or 1925, and believe me, the sight of an airplane flying through the air was something that people would
Watched
come far and
outside.
near to see if they had the opportunity. This was something you heard roaring, you knew the word airplane, and you began searching for it. Look. I see it. And you watched it until it disappeared
sight.
as a mere speck.
My grandpa used to stand at the gate picket fence, and he would hold his hand because the sun was too bright, and he'd watch it till it went out of sight. He'd get moved.
And
Bye.
a particularly exciting viewing of one of these one day. I think this was I'm sure this was 1925. This plane was flying low enough you could see a man sitting in it. It wasn't just a machine, there was a man up there sitting in it. We called it he was driving. You know. And that gave it a different meaning as far as I was concerned. But it took years and years to accept the idea that this was not an ordinary event. Even as late as
till you found it.
even as late as 1933. By this time, I'm 15 years old.
Yeah.
A flight of Army Air Corps planes happened to come directly over us. Now, we had seen one plane at a time over a period of years, but this flight contained 33 planes. This was an event that was discussed the whole year. And actually what it was, this was the year of the World's Fair in Chicago, World's Fair of 1933. And these people were escorting the son-in-law of Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini's son-in-law was at the time the chief pilot of the Italian Air Force. He was on a goodwill tour in the U.S. and flying from Randolph Field. This flight went from Randolph Field to Chicago and came directly over us, and what a sight for us.
Oh, I guess so.